We're live. Yay! Hello. Oh, hello, people. We're live. Yay! Hi, I'm Tingying Dong. I'm a sound designer and a composer and also a technician. I think let's just chat a little bit while waiting for people to join. Oh my god, how exciting! I'm on live. Wow, this is wild. Uh, yeah. First of all, I want to really thank King's Head Theatre for inviting me to, share some of my experience as a sound designer. And during this session, please feel free to comment your thoughts or ask any questions, and I'll read them and I'll try to answer them as quick and well as I can. Uh, yeah, and then welcome people. Right, I think people are still joining, so let's wait for a few minutes and then we shall start. Let me have some water first. Ah, I mean, even though at home all the time is still drinking from the bottle, just easier to keep track on how much water I've been drinking. Have to keep hydrated. Um, Please make yourself comfortable and get your water, get your tea, coffee, snacks, and then we shall have this 30 minutes journey together. Oh, how exciting. I was really excited this morning because usually I have a bit trouble getting up early, but then this morning I did get up earlier than how I usually do because of the excitement. And then I felt it was almost like the sort of excitement I used to have like on a tech day. It's that kind of slightly nervous but a good kind of nervous, but then also so exciting to see like after the preparation you get to see how it's like in a space. Oh, I miss a tech session. I really do. Right. Uh, yeah. Let's wait a bit more while people come in. I mean, the weather's slightly cloudy today. Well, British weather. I'm used to it now. Uh, Hi, Fiona. Hello. Right, I'm having Instagram and Facebook both in front of me, and this it just feels wild. So cool. Um, yeah, I mean, I've been working on a couple of projects lately, finally. Um, One of them is a radio, and the other one is like a virtual project, but quite sound heavy, so it's very interesting to work on. And the funny thing is, for the radio play, it's sort of about cow burps, and then so I'm mainly composing the theme tunes for it, but then also I create cow burp effects, and that was fun because, fun fact, cows don't actually burp in an audible way, so then I have to make the burp, and then at some point I did try to record my own burping, which is a very fun experience. Good excuse to have some beer and then just point the recorder to my own mouth and then burp as loud as I can. Right. Let's see. People, welcome, people. I think we are almost ready to get started. Right. So, I think let me introduce myself briefly for the people who just joined. My name is Tingying Dong. I go by Ting because it's easier. I'm a sound designer, mainly for theatre, and I compose mainly as part of my design. So I compose soundscape and music. because sometimes you don't really find the type of sound you want for the show. So, being able to compose is quite handy. And then I also do some technical work on the side. I work as a DEP Mac Tech sometimes. So like sound number 3, number 2 on big shows, which is very exciting. Like being backstage running around really gives you the feeling of, wow, show business, you know. And then, so last year, I worked on a King's Head Theatre production called Joker, which was on in November. It was actually one of my first professional sound design projects. And then it got me an Offie nomination. I mean, not Offie nomination. How exciting. That turned out really well. Yeah, so basically, I work mainly for theater shows, plays to be more specific, because like theater plays and musicals, like in terms of sound design can be quite different. And I think usually in general for plays, there's like more room for a sound designer to be creative in, like creating the sound, really. And then, but due to the pandemic, projects got cancelled. So then lately it's mainly virtual projects or radios, which is sort of new for me, but also like very good challenge. So before I started in the theater industry, I actually was studying economics and behavioral economics. And I thought I would work in the business world, but then while I was getting closer and closer to the real world after doing some internship, I was like, nah, this is not for me. I don't really want to do it for the rest of my life or as a career. And then because I was always interested in doing theater, I really loved it. I started to do student theater when I was in high school, and I was always in student theater and then mainly performing actually, and I didn't really know that much about the backstage. The whole backstage world was, I didn't really know much about it until when I was doing my previous study, and I started to chat with a friend who's a stage manager, and then she told me a lot about that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, maybe that's something I can do as a career. So then eventually I moved to London to study at Lambda, the Stage Management Technical Theatre course, which now is called Production and Technical Arts. So I did 3 years there, and I basically only found out about my passion for sound during my first year at Lambda, because we did some small projects, and then like the tutor was very encouraging, and then he like really made me see that I can be good at this, and then it's like really, it's just simply interesting to do, like theater sound design. So I decided to go into it more. So basically from the second year on, I was mainly doing like specializing in sound. And so I did a few productions at Lambda, like within the Lambda productions. And then I also did some sound assistant or associate, or also other some technical work outside of Lambda in the industry. Yeah, so that really sort of prepared me to step into the industry as a professional sound designer. Congratulations on escaping the corporate world so young. It took me 35 years. I feel you. I mean, it is a struggle because also like my background is quite, like all my family works in sort of the business or like technology side. So then I didn't really think it as an option at that time. But yeah, but hooray to us. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, so then basically the production I did while I was at Lambda really prepared for me. And then also I think like in terms of sound itself, because I learned piano when I was very little. I learned it for a few years. To be honest, I didn't really enjoy it that much, so then I sort of stopped. But then I still had you know, the sense, like the musicality, and you know, the some an understanding of the music theory, etc. from that experience. And also I learned ballet for 10 years, and then that really, I think, like in combination, like they both sort of provided me like an understanding in music and rhythm and how like sound works to like like support emotion or like build atmosphere, like all of this, which is definitely very helpful with my sound design work. um yeah, so today I'm going to share with you my sort of experience in how to approach a script from a sound perspective, like how to enrich the sound and then also, therefore, to enrich the piece. Because I think it's interesting the development of sound design in theater. Because at the very beginning, you know, sound was served as a very practical purpose, um, and then usually you only have sound effects, and then it's like sound designer was seen more as a facilitator rather than part of the creating part of the creative team. But then it really developed. So like basically now you can use sound for lots of different ways, and then to serve different purposes, and then to really make the piece more interesting, and then really helps the audience to immerse themselves in this world that they see on stage. And I think also like at the same time, I mean, directors also, like lots of directors are also very interested in, like, you know, incorporating sound into their production as part of, or like sometimes like a main part of their, like, you know, creating the world, like building the style and telling the story and then everything. um yeah, so then basically, you know, when you use sound, there's obviously the practical reasons. They serve as effects to build the world, and then there's also the artistical and dramatic purpose that they serve. um right, so let's see, how do I want to talk about this? So basically, so first let me talk a little bit about how I read the script. So usually when I get the script is before I meet the director, and so usually I get the script, I read it, and I meet with the director and talk with them about my ideas, and then they will also give me their ideas. And also the things, usually during that meeting, the design idea is also there. So like basically the scenography. So then you sort of really get a feeling of the style of the show, and then so you would develop your ideas further based on the scenography, and then also on the director's idea of how they think the show can sound like. And then basically it's like a ever evolving creation of ideas and concept, because then also you have the read through and you have the rehearsals, and you see how the actors interpret their parts, or the lines, the text, and all the movements. And then you also get ideas from it, and you create sound, and then they react on it, and then you have more ideas. And so it's like really a collaboration of making the project. And then the way I read script, usually before meeting with the director, I would read it at least twice to develop a good concept of the sound world to chat with the director. So basically, usually the first time is sort of like a quick read through to know the story, to, you know, get a general feeling of the story. Like it doesn't have to be a lot of details. Usually I don't really make notes during the first read, But then it's, for me, like more important is to know the story and then to grab that feeling of knowing the story for the first time. Because sometimes, when you start to get like really work on it, you get into your head. Like sometimes I get into my head and then I get lost a little bit. So I think it's important that you keep that feeling you get from the first read, and then you sort of look back to it during the whole process, and then you like it's quite a precious thing. I mean, for me to keep holding on to that feeling, like the initial feeling I get from reading the script, and then the second read usually takes quite a long time. I really need to sit down and then not getting disturbed, taking notes while reading. Um, so basically, I would mark out like sound effects. Basically, it's like sound effects and soundscapes and music. The sound effects are quite obvious. Like lots of the times, it's written in the stage description, and then sometimes slightly less obvious. It's like the characters might say something that mentions some sort of sound, and you have to note that. Um, and then so I would mark all of them out. So basically, I know what sound effects we need and where they are from. So for example, are they on some special place on stage or off stage, or like general ambience, or sort of back in the auditorium? Yeah, so sound effects, and then there's soundscape and music. It's not always, very rarely written. So that's like a big room for me to really put in my creative input. Like how do I want to use them, and where can I use them? Like usually, so for example, when I read the script, I really pay attention to the moments that I feel like that I get strong feelings or like strong emotions, and then I will mark them out. Sometimes I know immediately what kind of sound I want to have with them. Sometimes I don't. I just have that strong feeling, so I'll mark them out and work them out later. Oh, by the way, please feel free to comment or ask questions. Yeah, always happy to, have some interaction. Um, yeah, so I mean, yeah, soundscape and music. So for example, usually, I mean, quite obviously, you have them for scene changes, and then sometimes you use them as underscore for certain texts, or movement, or actions, and sometimes you use sound to tell part of the story that's not told by the lines or the actors, or like, so basically there are some stories or some small parts, like some parts of the stories that's not shown otherwise, but then you can show it through sound in very smart ways, and then I think it's like a huge add-on to the whole story. And then obviously, like lots of the times you can also combine effects and soundscape to make something more complex and then more like fuller. Um, and then I think there are a few things I keep doing or keep in mind. So first is the style of the piece. So basically, I would try to match the style of the sound to the style of the show. So then you have this consistent style uh, within this production. For example, if it's, naturalistic or slightly abstract, or if it's like, in a certain period. Uh, yeah, so you want to keep that style, and then you want to, like, I will try to match all the sound effects and the soundscape to it. So that brings the question, it's like, because lots of the times, sound effects, like when you think about sound effects, they're naturalistic, but then with this kind of styling, it doesn't have to be, because sometimes, sound effects can serve as other purposes. It's sort of, it can trigger the characters' actions or emotions, where it's sort of like a reflection from their emotion. For example, towards the end of Joker, JR keeps calling Bert, but then every time all he gets was the voice message, voice machine message from Bert. So then basically every time he's feeling worse and worse about what happened to Bert, and then he's getting more and more desperate. So then in that situation, although the voice message is the same every time he calls, but then because of that feeling he has and the emotion he has, we decided to make the same sound effects to be more and more broken and distorted to reflect that feeling that JR has. And then I think as a sound designer, I try to be committing to the moment. So it's like really to feel what the actors or feel what the characters are feeling, and then really try to delve myself into the whole setting, the whole story, or if it's a historical piece, like try to get myself into that time, and I think it really helped me to create sound when I'm in that kind of state. Um, and then I think, yeah, it's important to take it further, no matter if it's the sound effects described in the script, or sometimes you get notes from directors like, oh, I want this effects here, or I want this kind of feeling. Like, I think it's important to know what they are asking, and then because basically you need to have like a very good understanding of the script, the project, and then you need to understand what the director is actually asking for, like what's the feeling. So because sometimes, like when they say, for example, I want ambulance, I want sirens here, because it gives you the feeling of jarring and an emergency. And then so I would think, okay, can I take this further to the next step? Like is there so is using sirens the only way, or is there other ways to develop this idea into something even bigger to accomplish this purpose? And then I think it's important to learn from other forms of art. Like film is always helpful for me to learn from, because like the sound in film is always very detailed. And then sometimes when you're doing, also even when you're doing research, and like lots of the film has, like it's quite historically accurate with sound, so you can always learn from that. um yeah. Cool. Anyone has any questions so far? Yeah, feel free to write something down. um Oh, there are some questions. I'm so sorry. Are there certain moments, emotional points in scripts that you love designing for the most? Uh, yes. So basically, uh, I like intense moments, because like for those moments you really feel. Because sometimes I see shows and there are some intense moments that's not supported by sound, and I myself really notice it. So then I think it's important to have sound to support those moments. Yeah, so that's why I mark out all the strong emotions I feel from reading a script. So then I would create something for it. And then also like sometimes there are some certain moments that, or some certain parts, it's because I really enjoy combining, real life sound effects with more abstract soundscape. So I think, and then I think they work well with some certain um, type of moments. So then I also really enjoy making that. And then Susan, cool. Hi there. Thanks for this. So interesting. Thank you. How much would be decided in the early stages / before rehearsals, or would you be present in a lot of rehearsals to see what's needed? Right. So basically, usually in the early stages, for me, I would create ideas. So I have it's probably not very concrete, but I have ideas of what kind of sound I want to use, what the style I want. And then usually I start to create a concept of things after talking with the director. And then I try to be present at the rehearsal as much as I can, because lots of times I get so much inspiration from the rehearsal process, and then sometimes like what the actors are doing can be slightly different how I interpret it when I'm reading the script. So then that's really helpful to, I think, to develop the sound based on what the actors and the directors are doing. So then I try to be there and then create more detailed sound design based on what they are doing, and then obviously also let them to try during the rehearsal and then keep making adjustments and changes, etc. Right. Hope that answers your question. So now we've got 3 minutes left. If you have more questions, please feel free to write them down in the comments area. Right. Oh, and then there's another thing called the arch. I actually learned it during. Oh, great, it was helpful. So no worries. The arch. So I only actually learned it from working with directors, because basically, with a story, there's sometimes, well, not always, the arch of the story either is like emotionally or just story wise, and then we would really want to express or support or make this arch more obvious, and the sound is like a great way to make this happen. Because because like even as simple as scene change music, if you want to keep the scene change music in the same style, but then there's the arch, and then you can really sort of manipulate the scene change to build this arch. For example, again, Joker, it started as a very hot piece of two guys calling each other on the phones and then, jerking off, but then gradually it gets quite sad and emotional because the whole story happened in the 1980s during the whole HIV epidemic, and then like things were getting worse, and then one of the characters passed away from this, and then it's really like a sort of, it's slightly like a roller coaster of emotion. So then, although we wanted to use disco as very stylistic way to express this piece, but then because of the change of the emotion, the choice of music was also changing based on this to support, to make the storyline and the emotion change more clear. Right, now we've got 1 minute left. Anything? Anyone? Anything to ask? This is your last chance. But also, feel free, if you have any questions, you can contact me. Right. So, I think it's time for this little journey. I really would like to thank everyone who's here listening to me sharing my experience. And thank you for KHTOnline Theatre online live session to invite me to share. A favorite show you've worked on? Well, Joker was definitely one of my favorite. There's actually quite a few, like, because I really like doing the shows that I can really use sound to make a big impact. So Joker is one of them, and then there's Blood Orange, which I did after Joker. It was quite psychological. It's a one-woman show, and the sound really played a big part in it. Right, and then continue. Thank you very much for KHTOnline Theatre for inviting me to share my experience. And the hashtag KHTOnline, which is this session, is on every weekday at 1 p.m. On both Facebook and Instagram on the KHTOnline Theatre page. So tune in if you're interested in any of the topics. And then you can also find and watch the previous sessions they did on the KHTOnline blog or their YouTube channel and on their IGTV on Instagram. And all right, glad to talk to you. Have a lovely day. Bye.